The first rays of sunlight pierce through the cave entrance, painting golden streaks across the limestone walls. A child stirs first, not because of an alarm clock or a parent's voice, but because their body is perfectly synchronized with the natural world. This isn't the grunting, club-dragging caveman scene Hollywood has burned into our collective imagination. This is a sophisticated human settlement 30,000 years ago in what would one day become southern France. And these people are about to begin a day more complex than most of us realize. Forget everything you think you know about cavemen. That very word is misleading. The population density was very low, around only 0.4 inhabitants per square kilometer, which meant most Paleolithic peoples didn't live in caves at all. They were nomadic, following game and seasonal plants across vast territories. When they did use caves, it was often as temporary shelters during harsh weather or as special ceremonial spaces. The popular image of primitive brutes huddled permanently in dank caves. Pure fiction. As dawn breaks, bodies begin to move with the practiced efficiency of people who've never known the jarring shock of an alarm clock. Their circadian rhythms, uninterrupted by artificial light, work in perfect harmony with the sun. Modern sleep researchers studying communities without electricity have discovered something remarkable. Humans naturally wake gradually with increasing light, experiencing none of the grogginess we call sleep inertia. Our Paleolithic ancestors enjoyed what we now pay thousands of dollars trying to achieve with smart home systems and sunrise simulation lamps. The morning sounds aren't the beeping of phones or the hum of traffic, but a symphony of awakening life. Birds announce the dawn, wind rustles through nearby trees, and the soft breathing of 25 souls sharing the same space creates a rhythm as familiar as a heartbeat. Extended families sleep together, children nestled between adults, creating a warmth and security that modern isolated bedrooms can't replicate. Think of it as the world's oldest co-sleeping arrangement, one that child development experts now recognize as crucial for infant survival and emotional development. As eyes open and bodies stretch, there's no rush to check emails or scroll through social media. Instead, there's an immediate awareness of the group's needs. Did anyone hear predators during the night? How did the elderly grandmother's cough sound? Is the pregnant woman showing signs of labor? This heightened social awareness isn't primitive. It's a sophisticated form of community care that modern medicine is only now rediscovering through concepts like social determinants of health. The first movements of the day are deliberate and purposeful. Unlike our modern stumble to the coffee maker, every action has been refined through generations of practice. Children learn by watching, absorbing a morning routine that has ensured human survival for hundreds of thousands of years. This is how every Paleolithic day begins, not with chaos and confusion, but with the practiced efficiency of people who've mastered the art of living in harmony with their environment. Before anyone thinks about breakfast, before water is fetched, before any hunting plans are made, one task takes absolute priority: the fire. In the pre-dawn darkness, the designated firekeeper, often an elder with decades of experience, carefully approaches the hearth. The difficulties of first identifying heated materials in the Paleolithic record, and second determining whether humans were the agents responsible, have been recognized by archaeologists since at least the mid-20th century. But one thing is certain: maintaining fire was perhaps the most critical daily task. This isn't just about warmth, though in the Ice Age climate, that's crucial. Fire is technology, protection, social hub, and food processor all rolled into one. The firekeeper kneels beside the hearth, gently blowing on embers that have been carefully banked the night before. Think of it as humanity's first 24/7 operation, a flame that might have been passed down through generations, never allowed to fully die. The technique is precise. Too much air and the fragile embers scatter, too little and they suffocate. The firekeeper has learned this balance through years of practice, understanding aerodynamics in a way that would make modern engineers nod in appreciation. Small dry twigs are added first, kindling gathered the day before and stored in a dry spot. This isn't random, it's a carefully curated selection of materials, each chosen for its burning properties. Modern campers who struggle with matches and lighter fluid would be amazed at the efficiency. Within minutes, flames begin to lick upward, casting dancing shadows on the cave walls. The firekeeper adds larger pieces, creating a structure that maximizes airflow while conserving fuel. Its architecture and chemistry combined, knowledge passed down through countless generations without a single written manual. But here's what most people don't realize. This fire isn't just for one family. Evidence from fossilized skeletons that archaeologists have found indicate that ancient foragers were less likely to suffer from starvation or malnutrition and were generally taller and healthier than the peasants who came after them. This health wasn't accidental. It came from communities that shared resources, including fire. Other groups might come to borrow embers, creating a network of reciprocal relationships that would make modern social media look primitive. The morning fire serves multiple purposes simultaneously. It's a deterrent to predators who might still be prowling in the dawn light. It's a signal to other human groups. Smoke rising in the morning air says, "We are here, we are alive, we are human." It's the center of breakfast preparation, tool making, and social gathering. In essence, it's the heart of Paleolithic technology. As the flames grow stronger, the firekeeper's job shifts from ignition to management. Different areas of the hearth are prepared for different purposes. A hot section for cooking, a cooler area for warmth, a bed of coals for tool making later. This isn't random fire tending, it's skilled technical work that required understanding heat distribution, fuel consumption, and timing. The firekeeper is engineer, chemist, and social coordinator all at once, managing humanity's most transformative technology with an expertise we're only now beginning to fully appreciate. As the fire crackles to life and warmth spreads through the settlement, something remarkable happens. Without any formal announcement, without scheduled calendar invites or agenda items, the adults begin to gather around the hearth. This is the morning council, a daily practice that predates any formal government by tens of thousands of years, yet operates with an efficiency that would make modern management consultants envious. The elderly woman who leads the group doesn't hold her position because of hereditary privilege or political maneuvering. She's earned respect through decades of successful decisions, deep knowledge of the landscape, and an uncanny ability to predict weather patterns. Archaeological evidence from art and funerary rituals indicates that a number of individual women enjoyed seemingly high status in their communities, and it is likely that both sexes participated in decision-making. This isn't the patriarchal caveman society popular culture imagines. It's a pragmatic system where competence matters more than gender. The discussion begins with immediate concerns. A young hunter reports tracks near the water source, possibly deer, but the prints suggest they're wary, perhaps sensing predators. An experienced gatherer mentions that the hazelnut groves 2 valleys over should be ready for harvest within days. Someone else notes that the wind patterns have shifted, suggesting weather changes ahead. This isn't idle chatter, it's intelligence gathering that would rival any modern situation room. What's fascinating is how decisions are made. There's no formal voting, no Robert's Rules of Order, yet everyone who wants to speak gets heard. Even adolescents can offer observations, though they're expected to listen more than talk. The process resembles what anthropologists call consensus building. Ideas are discussed, modified, and refined until a general agreement emerges. It's democracy in its purest form, thousands of years before Athens claimed to invent it. Today's plan emerges organically. A hunting party will investigate those deer tracks, but they'll take a circuitous route to check 3 other potential sites along the way. A gathering group will head to yesterday's nut grove to finish collection there before the hazelnuts fully ripen. 2 crafters will stay behind to finish preparing winter clothing. The weather change makes this urgent. An elder will take the children to the stream, combining water collection with education about edible plants along the way. Notice what's missing. No one is assigned to meaningless busy work. No one spends 8 hours on a single repetitive task. Every activity has clear purpose and immediate benefit to the group. The modern concept of bullshit jobs that anthropologist David Graeber wrote about would be incomprehensible to these people. Every task directly contributes to survival and well-being. The morning council also serves a social function we've largely lost in modern life. It's a daily reaffirmation of community bonds, a chance to air grievances before they fester, and an opportunity to share knowledge across generations. The grandmother teaching a young mother about infant care, the experienced hunter demonstrating a new tracking technique, the child excitedly describing a new berry patch they discovered. All of this happens organically within the council structure. It's education, governance, and social bonding rolled into one efficient morning ritual that sets the tone for the entire day. With the day's plan settled, one of the first groups to depart faces a task so fundamental we barely think about it today: water collection. Turn a handle, water flows. But for our Paleolithic ancestors, water meant a daily journey that shaped settlement patterns, social structures, and survival itself. This morning, like every morning for thousands of years, a small group prepares for the water run. The water carriers aren't chosen randomly. They're typically adolescents and young adults, old enough to carry heavy loads, young enough to make the journey quickly. They grab containers made from animal bladders and tightly woven baskets sealed with pine resin. Think of these as humanity's first water bottles, engineered through trial and error to be lightweight when empty, yet sturdy when full. Some groups near rivers used hollowed gourds, others crafted containers from birch bark. The technology varied, but the need remained constant. The journey to water isn't just about filling containers. It's a carefully choreographed safety operation. The water source attracts every living thing in the area, from harmless deer to dangerous predators. The group moves with practiced caution, one person always scanning for threats while others fill containers. They've learned that dawn and dusk are the most dangerous times, when predators hunt. Mid-morning offers the best balance of visibility and safety. Along the way, they're not just walking. They're gathering intelligence. Fresh tracks in the mud tell stories. Which animals drank here last night, whether predators are nearby, if other human groups have passed through. A broken branch might indicate a bear's passage. Disturbed vegetation could mean a herd of aurochs. This information is as valuable as the water itself, mental notes that will be shared back at camp. The water source itself is a marvel of accumulated knowledge. They know which pools stay cleanest, which streams run year-round, where the water tastes sweetest. Some groups discovered natural filtration, collecting water where it seeped through sand and gravel. Others learned to avoid certain sources during algae blooms. This wasn't written in any manual. It was knowledge earned through generations of observation, sometimes paid for with severe illness when mistakes were made. But here's what archaeology reveals that surprises modern researchers. Large-seeded legumes were part of the human diet long before the Neolithic Revolution, as evident from archaeobotanical finds from the Mousterian layers of Kebara Cave in Israel. These water-gathering trips served double duty. The carriers collected edible plants along the way, maximizing efficiency in a way that would make modern productivity experts proud. A single journey accomplished multiple tasks: water, food, intelligence gathering, and territory monitoring. The return journey is the hardest. A filled water container can weigh 30 pounds or more. The carriers have developed specific techniques, using tump lines across their foreheads to distribute weight, walking with a particular gait that minimizes sloshing, taking specific routes that avoid rough terrain. It's ergonomics developed through millennia of practice. Modern hikers with their high-tech hydration systems are using principles these ancient people perfected. Distribute weight evenly, maintain steady pace, protect the water at all costs. Because without water, nothing else matters. While the water carriers make their journey, another group prepares for what we might call the breakfast hunt, though this bears no resemblance to a quick trip to the grocery store. The hunters who reported deer tracks at the morning council now gather their equipment with the focused intensity of surgeons preparing for a complex operation. This isn't the dramatic mammoth hunt of popular imagination. This is about securing fresh protein for the morning meal. The hunting party is small, usually 3 to 5 individuals who've worked together for years. They know each other's movements, can communicate with subtle hand signals, and trust each other implicitly. Their weapons are marvels of engineering. Wooden spears with tips hardened in fire, perfectly balanced for throwing. Some carry spear throwers, or atlatls, which multiply the force of their throw. The earliest European hand axes are assigned to the Abbevillien industry, which developed in northern France in the valley of the Somme River. But by this period, tool-making has evolved into a sophisticated art. But here's what most people don't understand. Paleolithic hunting success came more from intelligence than strength. These hunters are behaviorists who've spent lifetimes studying their prey. They know that deer feed in predictable patterns, that they prefer certain plants at specific times of day, that they have favorite routes between feeding and watering areas. This knowledge, accumulated over generations, gives them an advantage no amount of modern technology can replicate. The hunters move through the landscape reading signs invisible to modern eyes. A bent grass blade tells them how recently an animal passed. The height of browsed branches indicates the size of the deer. Fresh droppings reveal diet and health. They're not just following tracks. They're predicting where the animal will be, thinking several moves ahead like chess masters. This predictive hunting requires cognitive abilities that neuroscientists now recognize as foundational to human intelligence. When they finally spot their prey, a small group of deer grazing in a clearing, the real skill begins. They must position themselves downwind, move silently across terrain that seems designed to create noise, and coordinate their attack without verbal communication. One hunter might circle wide to drive the deer toward hidden companions. Others position themselves along likely escape routes. It's a complex tactical operation that military strategists would recognize as an ambush. The moment of truth comes quickly. A thrown spear, launched with practiced precision, can cover 30 yards in under 2 seconds. There's no room for error. A missed throw means the deer escape, and the hunters return empty-handed. But when successful, the result is immediate protein for the group. The animal is quickly field-dressed, with every part utilized. Nothing is wasted because waste means hunger. What's remarkable is the efficiency of this system. Evidence from fossilized skeletons that archaeologists have found indicate that ancient foragers were less likely to suffer from starvation or malnutrition and were generally taller and healthier than the peasants who came after them. This wasn't despite their hunting methods, it was because of them. The combination of detailed ecological knowledge, sophisticated hunting strategies, and absolute utilization of resources created a sustainable system that supported human populations for hundreds of thousands of years. The breakfast hunt isn't just about food, it's about the culmination of human intelligence, cooperation, and adaptation that allowed our species to thrive in environments across the globe. While hunters pursue game and gatherers collect plants, one group remains behind, engaged in what might be humanity's oldest manufacturing process. The toolmaker sits cross-legged near the fire, surrounded by carefully selected stones, examining each one like a jeweler inspecting diamonds. This isn't crude rock bashing. It's precision engineering that would take modern humans years to master. Stone toolmaking is a demanding technical skill that can take years to master. With an average of 167 hours practice over 22 months, our subjects gained competence in flake production, but showed less improvement in hand axe making. Think about that. 167 hours just to become competent at basic flaking. Our Paleolithic toolmaker has been practicing since childhood, accumulating thousands of hours of experience. The morning's work begins with material selection. Not just any rock will do. The toolmaker needs cryptocrystalline stones, flint, chert, or obsidian, that fracture predictably. When a force is applied to cryptocrystalline or fine-grained rocks like flint, chert, or obsidian, the resulting fracture spreads outward from the point of impact in a curved shell-like pattern. Conchoidal fracture. This knowledge, passed down through generations, represents humanity's first materials science. Watch the toolmaker's hands. The left grips the core stone at a precise angle. The right holds the hammerstone, not too heavy, not too light, chosen for this specific task. The strike comes not from the arm, but from the wrist, a controlled snap that directs force exactly where needed. Modern studies using brain imaging show that making technical judgments about lower Paleolithic toolmaking affects neural activity and functional connectivity in dorsal prefrontal cortex, the same brain regions we use for complex planning and decision-making today. Each strike is a calculated risk. Mistakes in knapping are often fatal to the tool being created. One wrong hit can shatter hours of work. The toolmaker must constantly evaluate, is this the right angle? How much force? Where exactly should the blow land? It's a three-dimensional chess game where every move permanently alters the board. The workshop isn't just about making tools, it's about innovation. The Aurignacian culture seems to have been the first to rely largely on blades. The use of blades exponentially increases the efficiency of core usage compared to the Levallois flake technique. This represents a technological revolution as significant as the computer chip. More cutting edge from the same amount of raw material means less time gathering stones, more time for other activities. It's the Paleolithic equivalent of industrial efficiency. The social aspect is equally important. Young apprentices watch every move, learning through observation. There's no YouTube tutorial, no written manual, just the patient transmission of knowledge from master to student. The toolmaker occasionally pauses to let an apprentice try, guiding their hands, correcting their grip. This teaching moment represents something profound. The deliberate transfer of complex technical knowledge, a uniquely human trait that allows culture to accumulate and progress across generations. As the toolmaker works, another group prepares for what many consider the most important daily activity, gathering. Led by experienced women who know every edible plant within a day's walk, this expedition will provide the majority of calories consumed today. Forget the man the hunter stereotype. Archaeological evidence increasingly suggests that plant foods, not meat, form the foundation of the Paleolithic diet. The gathering party includes women of all ages, from grandmothers whose knowledge spans decades to young girls just learning to identify edible plants. Several men join too, particularly younger ones who haven't yet proven themselves as hunters. They carry specialized tools, digging sticks hardened in fire, woven baskets waterproofed with pine resin, and sharp flakes for cutting tough stems. It's a toolkit refined over millennia for maximum efficiency. Their destination today is a valley 2 hours away, where experience tells them certain tubers should be ready. But this isn't a single-minded grocery run. Large-seeded legumes were part of the human diet long before the Neolithic Revolution, as evident from archaeobotanical finds from the Mousterian layers of Kebara Cave in Israel. The gatherers move through the landscape like ecological scientists, constantly observing, testing, remembering. A young woman spots unfamiliar berries. Rather than risk poisoning, she performs a systematic test passed down through generations. First, she crushes a berry and rubs it on sensitive skin, the inside of her wrist. She'll wait to see if irritation develops. If not, she'll touch it to her lips, then the tip of her tongue, each step carefully spaced to monitor for reactions. This methodical approach to new foods allowed humans to expand into new territories and exploit novel resources safely. The knowledge required is staggering. Each gatherer must recognize dozens of edible plants at different growth stages, know which parts are edible when, understand preparation methods that neutralize toxins, and remember the location and timing of scattered resources across a vast landscape. Modern ethnobotanists studying indigenous peoples are amazed by the depth of this knowledge, often exceeding what's contained in scientific field guides. The gathering process itself is far from random wandering. The group follows a planned route that maximizes efficiency, visiting known resource patches in an order that considers ripening times, travel distances, and carrying capacity. They're essentially solving a complex optimization problem, what mathematicians now call the traveling salesman problem, using mental maps and collective memory instead of algorithms. Social bonds strengthen during these expeditions. Knowledge passes between generations through stories and songs that encode crucial information about plants, places, and seasons. Older women share gossip and wisdom while their hands work automatically, decades of practice making the gathering almost unconscious. Young mothers carry infants in slings, the babies absorbing the sights, sounds, and smells that will one day guide their own gathering. It's education, exercise, social time, and food procurement rolled into one efficient package. Back at camp, a group of children appears to be simply playing, but look closer. That game with miniature spears. It's developing the hand-eye coordination needed for hunting. The elaborate make-believe involving family roles. It's rehearsing crucial social dynamics. The Paleolithic playground was humanity's first educational system, and it was remarkably effective. A 6-year-old boy naps pebbles with intense concentration, mimicking the toolmaker's movements. His tools are laughably crude by adult standards, but each strike teaches the relationship between angle, force, and fracture. By adolescence, he'll produce functional tools. By adulthood, he might innovate new techniques. This progression from play to mastery happens without formal instruction, driven by intrinsic motivation that modern educators struggle to replicate. The girls aren't just playing with dolls, though they do that too, using figures made from clay or bundled grass. They're also practicing basket weaving with grass stems, learning the basic patterns that will eventually create waterproof containers. They identify edible plants in the area around camp, competing to see who can find the most species. It's botany class disguised as entertainment. Mixed-age playgroups create natural mentoring systems. Older children gain status by teaching younger ones, reinforcing their own knowledge in the process. A 12-year-old girl shows a younger child how to extract fibers from plant stems, demonstrating the patience and clarity of an experienced teacher. She learned this same skill from an older child years ago, continuing a chain of knowledge transfer stretching back generations. Physical play dominates much of the day. Children chase each other through obstacle courses of rocks and logs, developing the agility needed to navigate rough terrain while pursuing game or fleeing predators. They climb trees with monkey-like efficiency, throw stones at targets with increasing accuracy, and wrestle in ways that build strength while teaching social boundaries. It's a full-body curriculum that produces adults capable of remarkable physical feats. But perhaps most importantly, children have time, vast amounts of unstructured time to explore, experiment, and create. The dog was the first animal that Homo sapiens domesticated. Dogs are descendants of wild wolves, and their domestication occurred long before the agriculture revolution. A child playing with wolf puppies at the edge of camp might be participating in one of humanity's most transformative relationships. Without the pressure of formal schooling or structured activities, Paleolithic children learn at their own pace, following their interests, developing the diverse skills their society needs. It's an educational philosophy that modern alternative schools are only now rediscovering. As the sun reaches its zenith and temperatures soar, the camp settles into a rhythm forgotten by modern, climate-controlled societies. This is the midday rest, not laziness, but intelligent adaptation to environmental conditions. While we fight through afternoon drowsiness with caffeine and willpower, our ancestors aligned their activities with natural circadian rhythms. The hunters have returned, successful or not, and share their experiences with others lounging in whatever shade the landscape provides. Their stories aren't just entertainment, they're information transfer systems. A hunter describes new tracks spotted near a distant waterhole, updating the group's mental map of game movements. Another demonstrates how he modified his spear-throwing technique to account for wind, sharing innovation in real time. This rest period serves multiple functions beyond avoiding heat exhaustion. It's when tools are maintained and repaired. A hunter reflakes a dulled spear point. A gatherer reweaves a damaged basket section. The toolmaker, taking a break from intensive napping, sorts through the morning's production, setting aside the best pieces and evaluating what's still needed. It's quality control and inventory management, Paleolithic style. Social bonding intensifies during these quiet hours. Interband trade may have appeared during the Middle Paleolithic, because trade between bands would have helped ensure their survival by allowing them to exchange resources and commodities. A visitor from a neighboring band might arrive during midday, when travel is least pleasant, but camps are most likely to have everyone present. Information about resource locations, weather patterns, and the movement of other human groups gets exchanged along with trade goods. The elderly, valued for their knowledge rather than marginalized for their reduced physical capacity, hold court during rest periods, their living libraries, their memories containing decades of crucial information about rare events, droughts, exceptional winters, unusual animal behaviors. A grandmother recounts a similar weather pattern from 40 years ago and what plants remained edible during the drought that followed. This institutional memory helps the group prepare for low-frequency but high-impact events. Children nap or engage in quiet activities, processing the morning's intense learning through play and rest. Adults might work on non-urgent crafts, decorating tools, creating jewelry from shells and stones, experimenting with new techniques without the pressure of immediate need. It's during these relaxed moments that innovation often occurs, when minds freed from survival pressure can explore creative solutions. The midday rest also provides time for what we might now call preventive healthcare. Individuals tend to minor injuries before they become major problems, apply herbal remedies to cuts and bruises, and massage sore muscles. The group's informal medical knowledge gets shared and reinforced through casual conversation about what works and what doesn't. It's peer-reviewed medicine, tested across generations of practical application. As shadows begin to lengthen and temperatures drop, the camp stirs back to life with renewed energy. The afternoon is prime time for craft work, particularly the endless task of creating and maintaining clothing. In the Paleolithic world, Fashion wasn't about status, it was about survival, and the skills required would humble modern designers. A woman sits with a fresh deer hide, beginning the complex process of transformation. First, she uses a stone scraper to remove every trace of fat and flesh, a job requiring hours of careful work. Scrapers were essential for processing animal hides and other materials, playing a crucial role in early humans' daily lives. One missed spot could mean decay, ruining the entire hide. Her movements are rhythmic, almost meditative, muscle memory from years of practice guiding each stroke. Nearby, her sister works on a more advanced stage, softening an already cleaned hide. She's created a mixture of brain tissue and water, worked into a paste that contains natural enzymes perfect for breaking down the hide's tough fibers. Modern tanners using industrial chemicals would be amazed at the effectiveness of this Stone Age solution. She works the mixture into every fiber, kneading and stretching, transforming rigid skin into supple leather. The sewing station represents perhaps the most underappreciated Paleolithic innovation. From the Upper Paleolithic on, there is ample evidence that early humans used materials other than stone, such as bone, antler, and ivory, as part of their toolkit. The long bones, limb bones, of animals could be split and shaped into tools like awls, picks, and needles. A woman threads a bone needle with sinew, creating stitches so fine they'd rival modern work. She's adding fur lining to a winter coat, each piece carefully cut and positioned for maximum insulation. Children watch and help where they can, learning by doing. A young boy practices making cord from plant fibers, twisting and rolling them on his thigh to create strong thread. His first attempts are lumpy and weak, but patient guidance from an elder shows him the proper tension and rhythm. By adulthood, he'll be able to create cord strong enough to support a full-grown man's weight, essential for everything from trap making to shelter construction. The variety of clothing produced challenges our caveman stereotypes. These aren't crude fur wraps, but tailored garments with hoods, sleeves, and closures. Decorative elements appear too. Shells sewn in patterns, ochre designs painted on leather, fringes cut for both function and aesthetics. One woman works on what appears to be waterproof leggings using fish skin sewn with incredibly fine stitches that create a watertight seal. It's technical clothing that modern outdoor companies would recognize and respect. The afternoon craft session is also when ornamental items are created. A young man carefully drills a hole through a fox tooth using a stone drill and sand as an abrasive, a process taking hours of patient work. These ornaments aren't mere vanity, they're social signaling devices indicating skill, status, and group membership. They're also trade items, portable wealth that can be exchanged with other bands for resources or favors. The Paleolithic economy was more complex than simple subsistence, and afternoon craft time was when much of this economic production occurred. Picture this. It's 4:30 a.m. in a Paleolithic camp, and the night's fire has dwindled to barely glowing embers. One person stirs, sees the dying light, and knows exactly what must be done. In our world, we'd simply flip a switch or strike a match. But 40,000 years ago, rekindling that fire meant the difference between life and death. Fire wasn't just warmth, it was everything. Recent discoveries at Wonderwork Cave in South Africa suggest humans controlled fire as far back as 1 million years ago. But here's what most people don't realize. Maintaining fire was harder than making it. Paleolithic humans developed ingenious methods to keep flames alive for days, even weeks. The firekeeper, often an elder or injured member who couldn't hunt, would carefully feed the flames throughout the night. They'd use slow-burning materials like dried fungi or compacted dung, creating prehistoric time-release fuel. When moving camp, they'd carry glowing embers in hollow bones filled with moss. nature's original portable fire. Archaeological evidence from Abric Romani in Spain shows organized fire management dating back 70,000 years. Different areas had different fires, one for cooking, another for warmth, and separate fires for toolmaking, where consistent temperatures were crucial. Making fire from scratch required remarkable skill. The hand drill method, spinning a wooden stick against a baseboard, could take 30 minutes of intense effort. The person's hands would blister, their arms would ache, but stopping meant starting over. Successful firemakers were celebrities in their bands, their skills literally keeping everyone alive. Modern survivalists struggle to make fire even with knowledge of the techniques. Yet Paleolithic humans did this routinely in rain, snow, and wind. They understood which woods created the best friction, how humidity affected their chances, and the precise angle needed for success. This wasn't primitive, it was masterful engineering using only natural materials. The silence of a Paleolithic morning is broken by the sound of children's laughter echoing through the camp. While modern parents might drop their kids at daycare before heading to work, Paleolithic children were integral parts of daily life, learning by doing from the moment they could walk. Here's what shocks modern researchers. Children under 15 accounted for around half of the world's population during the Paleolithic. Today, they're only about a quarter. Picture a band of 35 people. 24 would be in their 20s or younger. This wasn't a world of adults with occasional children. It was a society where young voices dominated the soundscape. The archaeological evidence tells an extraordinary story. Hand stencil motifs belong to infants, children, and juveniles, revealing this stratum's importance in the artistic activity. In France's Rouffignac cave, tiny fingers trace patterns through soft clay, some made by children as young as 2 years old, held up by adults to reach the ceiling. This wasn't babysitting, it was cultural transmission in action. Unlike our age-segregated society, Paleolithic children were everywhere adults were. The tracks are not as anatomically distinct as those from Namibia, but they are smaller and may have been made by children as young as 1 or 2, standing in the mud while their parents and older siblings got on with their activities. This included knapping the stone tools with which they butchered the carcass of the hippo. Imagine toddlers watching intently as their parents crafted tools, their small footprints preserved beside a butchering site for thousands of years. By age 6 or 7, children were already contributing to the band's survival. Namibian footprints were made by a small group of children walking across a drying mud surface after a flock of sheep or goats. These weren't modern children with scheduled playdates. They were trusted with real responsibilities, learning through experience how to track animals and navigate their landscape. The learning process left its mark in the archaeological record. Archaeologists can recognize the work of a novice because people learning to produce stone tools make similar kinds of mistakes. Those fumbled attempts at tool making, hitting the stone core too hard or at the wrong angle, tell us children weren't just watching, they were practicing, failing, and trying again. Today's helicopter parents might cringe, but these children were handling sharp stones and learning through trial and error. Play wasn't separate from learning, it was learning. While modern children might play with plastic toy animals, Paleolithic children played with real bones, practiced with child-sized tools, and explored caves that would terrify most modern adults. Their games prepared them for adult life in ways our video games never could. As darkness fell across the Paleolithic landscape, something magical happened. The scattered members of the band converged around the central fire, transforming from individuals focused on survival tasks into a community. This wasn't just dinner time, it was when Paleolithic society truly came alive. The fire cast dancing shadows on faces worn by the day's activities. A successful hunter might be recounting the day's chase, using gestures and sounds to recreate the moment the spear found its mark. But don't imagine a monotone report. This was theater. Modern neuroscience shows that storytelling activates multiple brain regions, creating shared experiences. Our ancestors discovered this long before MRI machines. Archaeological evidence from Kesem Cave in Israel, dating back 400,000 years, reveals organized hearth areas with distinct zones for different activities. The main fire wasn't just for warmth, it was the prehistoric equivalent of both television and social media combined. Everyone gathered here, from nursing infants to weathered elders, creating a multi-generational space that modern society rarely achieves. Food sharing around the evening fire was more than nutrition, it was social glue. When meat was distributed, it followed complex social rules that anthropologists still observe in modern hunter-gatherer societies. The successful hunter often ate last, reinforcing social bonds through generosity. Compare this to modern families eating in shifts or alone in front of screens, and you realize we've lost something profound. The evening was prime time for tool maintenance and creation. With daylight gone, humans worked by firelight, their hands guided by muscle memory developed over years. Stone tool production wasn't rushed, it was methodical, almost meditative. The rhythmic sound of stone on stone became part of the evening's soundtrack, as familiar as our television theme songs. Music filled these evenings too. Bone flutes from Germany, dating to 43,000 years ago, weren't solo instruments. They were part of ensemble performances. Add drums made from stretched hides, rattles from gourds filled with stones, and voices raised in song, and you had a symphony that lasted hours. Unlike our passive entertainment consumption, everyone participated. Even infants experienced rhythm through their mothers' movements as they danced. These gatherings were when knowledge transferred between generations. No written manuals existed, so everything, from which plants were poisonous to how to track wounded prey, was transmitted orally. Elders held living libraries in their minds, and evening gatherings were when these books opened. A child listening to stories about the last great drought wasn't just being entertained, they were downloading survival software. As the fire burned lower and children dozed against their parents, adults might continue talking in low voices, planning tomorrow's activities or discussing concerns about weather patterns. The evening gathering wasn't just social time, it was when bands became communities, when individuals became a people. Without these nightly rituals, human culture as we know it might never have developed. Before the first bird sang, before even the faintest hint of dawn touched the eastern sky, someone in the Paleolithic camp was already awake. Their internal clock, unaffected by artificial light or alarm apps, responded to subtle cues we modern humans have largely forgotten. The slight drop in temperature before dawn, the changing sounds of nocturnal animals, the way the fire's crackle shifted as moisture gathered in the pre-dawn air. This early riser had one critical job: check the fire. In our world of instant heat and light, it's hard to grasp how terrifying a dead fire could be. Starting fire from scratch in the morning damp was a nightmare scenario. The firekeeper would carefully uncover the buried coals from the previous night, blowing gently to coax them back to life, adding dried moss or fungus that had been kept dry specifically for this purpose. As the fire rekindled, its light would gradually wake others. No jarring alarms, no rushed morning routines. Paleolithic mornings unfolded with the natural rhythm of increasing light. Bodies stirred under fur blankets. Children nestled closer to parents for a few more moments of warmth. The sounds were gentle, the soft breathing of the band, the rustle of someone stretching, the crack of joints as elders rose from sleeping positions. Music may have developed from rhythmic sounds produced by daily chores, for example, cracking open nuts with stones. The morning soundscape included these work rhythms, someone already beginning to process yesterday's gathered nuts, the steady scrape of hide preparation, the tap-tap-tap of stone tool maintenance. These weren't just chores, they were the morning music of the Paleolithic. Water collection was among the first tasks. Unlike turning a faucet, this meant someone walking to the nearest stream or spring, often several hundred meters away. They'd carry water in cleaned animal bladders or tightly woven baskets sealed with pine resin. The water carrier might pause to check for fresh animal tracks, multitasking that could determine the day's hunting plans. Morning hygiene existed, though it looked different from our routines. Teeth were cleaned with fibrous plant materials, faces washed in cold stream water. Hair was managed with bone combs and animal fat. Archaeological evidence shows surprisingly sophisticated grooming tools. Our ancestors weren't the unkempt savages popular culture imagines. Large seeded legumes were part of the human diet long before the Neolithic Revolution, as evident from archaeobotanical finds from the Mousterian layers of Kebara Cave in Israel Paleolithic, leftover roasted roots from the previous night, perhaps some dried meat, nuts gathered days ago. The morning meal was about quick energy before the day's real work began. As full daylight arrived, the band would gather briefly to plan who would hunt, who would gather, who would stay with the children and elders. These weren't casual decisions. They were survival strategies refined over thousands of generations. The morning ritual wasn't just about waking up. It was about synchronizing an entire community for another day of successful living in a challenging world. Imagine walking for weeks across unfamiliar landscapes, carrying precious cargo wrapped in animal hide. Your destination, a gathering place where multiple bands converge, drawn by the promise of exotic goods and vital social connections. This wasn't a medieval market or ancient bazaar. This was Paleolithic trade, and it was far more sophisticated than most people realize. The evidence is written in stone, literally. Obsidian tools found hundreds of miles from their volcanic sources tell stories of vast trading networks that spanned continents. At archaeological sites across Europe, researchers find Mediterranean seashells in landlocked regions, Baltic amber in southern caves, and high-quality flint that traveled distances that would challenge modern backpackers. These weren't casual exchanges between neighbors. Chemical analysis of stone tools reveals organized networks that moved materials across thousands of square miles. Sourcing artifacts, identifying where a particular raw material came from, involves a series of laboratory tests on artifacts which are then compared to known, similar materials. When scientists analyze a piece of obsidian found in France and trace it to a specific volcano in Italy, they're uncovering ancient trade routes that functioned for thousands of years. But why would Paleolithic humans walk hundreds of miles for a particular type of stone when adequate materials existed locally? The answer reveals something profound about human nature. These trades weren't just about acquiring better tools. They were about maintaining social networks that could mean survival during hard times. A band with connections to multiple groups had insurance against local disasters, potential marriage partners, and access to diverse knowledge. Exchange could be used to strengthen social bonds instead of creating wealth. Unlike our market economy, where strangers exchange money for goods, Paleolithic trade was deeply personal. When bands met at traditional gathering places, often located at geographic features like river confluences or mountain passes, they weren't just trading objects, they were trading stories, genes, and survival strategies. The gatherings themselves were events. Picture dozens of bands converging during autumn when certain resources were abundant. While we might check our phones at a boring trade show, Paleolithic peoples engaged in days of feasting, dancing, and ceremony. Young people found marriage partners, elders shared crucial environmental knowledge, and children played with peers they might not see for another year. Women likely played a crucial role in these networks. Ethnographic studies of modern hunter-gatherers show that women often maintain the social relationships that bind groups together. Those shell necklaces found far inland, they might represent a young woman's journey to join a distant band, carrying with her not just ornaments, but also knowledge of coastal resources and techniques. The complexity of these networks challenges our assumptions about primitive peoples. They maintained mental maps of territories spanning hundreds of miles, remembered genealogies linking distant groups, and honored trade partnerships that might stretch across generations. When a piece of Baltic amber reached the Mediterranean, it didn't travel through anonymous middlemen. It moved through a chain of relationships, each exchange strengthening bonds that had existed since time immemorial. The flickering firelight cast shadows on the cave wall, transforming natural rock formations into something more. Spirits, perhaps, or ancestors watching from beyond. A body lies prepared for burial, covered in red ochre that gleams like blood in the dancing light. This isn't a scene from recorded history, but from 30,000 years ago, when Paleolithic humans developed complex spiritual beliefs that would shock those who dismiss them as primitive. Graves are the clearest signs of spiritual behavior, as it shows delineation between the world of the living and the world of the dead. The evidence begins in the Middle Paleolithic with our Neanderthal cousins. At sites like La Chapelle-aux-Saints and Shanidar, bodies were carefully positioned, sometimes with stone tools and animal parts. This wasn't casual disposal, it was intentional burial, suggesting beliefs about death that transcended mere hygiene. But the Upper Paleolithic reveals something extraordinary. Based on the grave goods found beside the deceased, Upper Paleolithic burials are undoubtedly evidence of spirituality and religiousness. At Sunghir in Russia, archaeologists uncovered burials so elaborate they rival those of Egyptian pharaohs. An adult male was covered in thousands of ivory beads that would have taken 10,000 hours to create. Over a year of full-time work, 2 children, buried head-to-head, wore clothing adorned with fox teeth and mammoth ivory. Red ochre appears everywhere in Paleolithic spiritual practice. This iron oxide pigment wasn't just decoration, it symbolized blood, life, and transformation. Bodies were painted with it, graves were sprinkled with it, and it stained the hands that prepared the dead. Modern cultures still use red in death rituals, from Hindu cremation ceremonies to Christian cardinal vestments, suggesting this color symbolism runs deep in human consciousness. The oldest known burials can be attributed to the Middle Paleolithic period. The corpses, accompanied by stone tools and parts of animals, were laid in holes in the ground, and sometimes the corpses were especially protected. Some bodies were placed in fetal positions, perhaps symbolizing rebirth. Others were oriented toward the rising sun. These weren't random choices, but deliberate ritual acts. Cave art and spirituality intertwined in ways we're only beginning to understand. Deep caves requiring dangerous journeys through darkness became sacred spaces. Why risk life and limb to paint in chambers where no one lived? The answer lies in the spiritual significance of caves as portals between worlds, wombs of the earth where spirits dwelt. The art itself reveals spiritual thinking. Human-animal hybrid figures appear repeatedly, shamans transformed during trance states, or mythological beings that populated Paleolithic cosmology. Hand stencils, created by blowing pigment over hands pressed against cave walls, might represent attempts to leave one's essence in sacred space, like modern pilgrims leaving offerings at shrines. The research now suggests that the site is characterized by a much greater diversity of mortuary behaviors than archaeologists previously thought. Not everyone received elaborate burial. Some bodies were left exposed, others received minimal treatment, while certain individuals, Perhaps shamans, leaders, or those deemed special received extraordinary care. This differential treatment suggests complex social and spiritual hierarchies. Music, dance, and altered states of consciousness likely played central roles in Paleolithic spirituality. Bone flutes and cave acoustics designed to amplify sound suggest musical ceremonies. Repetitive drumming and dancing, techniques still used worldwide to induce trance states, probably helped Paleolithic shamans journey to spirit worlds. These weren't primitive superstitions, but sophisticated spiritual systems that helped humans make sense of existence, death, and their place in the cosmos. The foundations of human spirituality, the belief in souls, afterlife, and supernatural forces, emerged in the Paleolithic and remain with us today, whether expressed through organized religion or personal spirituality. A young hunter writhes in pain, his leg bent at an unnatural angle after a fall during the mammoth chase. In our world, he'd be rushed to an emergency room for x-rays and surgery. But 30,000 years ago, something remarkable happens. The band's healer approaches with practiced confidence, carrying tools and knowledge passed down through countless generations. What follows would surprise modern medical professionals. Archaeological evidence reveals that Paleolithic humans possess sophisticated medical knowledge that challenges our assumptions about primitive healthcare. Trepanning, sometimes trephaning, was a basic surgical operation in which a hole was drilled or scraped into the skull. It was carried out in prehistoric societies across the world. This wasn't random hole drilling by ignorant savages. Many patients survived, as evidenced by healed bone growth around the surgical sites. The Paleolithic medicine cabinet was nature's pharmacy. Of the 212 plant species identified, around 60% were medicinal and edible. They could have been used for food, medicine, or both. Willow bark for pain relief, containing the precursor to aspirin, specific mosses with antibiotic properties, and countless herbs for treating everything from wounds to digestive issues. This wasn't guesswork. It represented accumulated knowledge refined over thousands of years. Broken bones tell stories of successful treatment. Archaeologists find healed fractures that were properly set, sometimes with evidence of splints made from wood and secured with plant fibers. The alignment of these healed bones often rivals modern orthopedic work. These ancient bone setters understood anatomy through hands-on experience that modern medical students gain through textbooks. This practice refers to eating soil-like or earthy substances such as chalk and clay. Animals and humans have done this for hundreds of thousands of years. What we might dismiss as eating dirt was actually sophisticated medicine. Certain clays have antimicrobial properties and can treat digestive issues, something pharmaceutical companies have only recently begun to explore. The role of the healer combined what we'd separate into multiple specialties: physician, pharmacist, psychologist, and spiritual counselor. These weren't charlatan faith healers, but individuals with deep knowledge of human anatomy, plant medicine, and psychological healing. They understood that treating the whole person, body, mind, and spirit, was more effective than addressing symptoms alone. Care for the disabled and injured reveals the compassionate heart of Paleolithic medicine. Skeletons show individuals who survived for years with disabilities that would have required constant care. A man with a withered arm who lived to old age. A woman with severe arthritis who was clearly supported by her community. These weren't societies that abandoned the weak, but ones that valued every member. Animals suffering from a parasite or other malady will deliberately consume substances that are medicinal, but have little or no nutritional value. Paleolithic humans likely learned by observing animals self-medicating, then expanded this knowledge through experimentation. When your survival depends on staying healthy, you become an excellent observer of what works. Dental care existed too. Evidence of toothpicks made from wood and bone, along with wear patterns suggesting regular cleaning, shows concern for oral health. Some skulls even show evidence of primitive dentistry, infected teeth that were deliberately removed to prevent the spread of infection. Wound care was surprisingly advanced. Honey, which has antimicrobial properties, was likely used when available. Certain tree resins served as natural bandages that both protected wounds and prevented infection. Spider webs might have been used to help blood clot, a practice some traditional healers still use today. The biggest difference between Paleolithic and modern medicine wasn't knowledge, but technology. These healers understood infection even without knowing about bacteria, recognized medicinal plants, set bones, performed surgery, and provided psychological support. They simply did it all without x-rays, antibiotics, or anesthesia. Their success rate, evidenced by healed injuries in the archaeological record, suggests they were remarkably effective despite these limitations. As darkness deepens around the fire, an elderly woman clears her throat and the entire band falls silent. This is the moment everyone has been waiting for. In our modern world, we might call it prime time television, but for Paleolithic peoples, this was the storyteller's hour. The flames cast dancing shadows on the cave walls, creating the perfect backdrop for tales that have been passed down for generations. Recent archaeological evidence from Chauvet Cave in France reveals that storytelling wasn't just entertainment. The placement of images deep within caves, requiring torches and careful navigation, suggests these were sacred spaces where stories merged with ritual. Dr. Jean Klotz, who studied these ancient narrative spaces, discovered that many cave paintings were positioned to create animation effects in flickering firelight. A bison might appear to run across the wall as flames danced, bringing the story to life in ways that would make modern filmmakers envious. The stories themselves served multiple purposes. They were history lessons, teaching young ones about successful hunting grounds and dangerous territories. They were science classes, explaining animal behavior and seasonal patterns. They were moral instruction, reinforcing social bonds and proper behavior. Imagine a grandmother describing how the clan survived the terrible winter when she was young, her words painting pictures more vivid than any photograph. The children lean forward, eyes wide, absorbing not just the tale, but crucial survival information wrapped in narrative. Linguistic analysis suggests that complex language capable of storytelling emerged at least 100,000 years ago, possibly earlier. This timing coincides with the emergence of symbolic thinking and art. The human brain seems hardwired for narrative, and these evening sessions around the fire literally shaped our neural pathways. When modern researchers play recordings of stories to test subjects while monitoring brain activity, they find that narrative engages more neural networks than any other form of communication. The storyteller's role was so crucial that many societies developed special positions for these memory keepers. Evidence from burial sites shows that some individuals were buried with special items suggesting their role as knowledge holders. In one fascinating case from Sungir in Russia, dating to 28,000 years ago, an elderly man was buried with ivory beads arranged in patterns that might have represented stories or songs, taking his tales to the grave but leaving us hints of their importance. The old woman's fingers trace patterns in the dirt as she explains the coming change. 3 more sunrises until the great migration begins. Every member of the band knows their role in this ancient choreography. Seasonal movement wasn't random wandering, but carefully planned relocations following patterns established over millennia. For Paleolithic peoples, reading the seasons was a matter of life and death. Archaeological evidence from Pinsevent in France, dated to about 12,000 years ago, reveals the complexity of these seasonal rounds. Researchers found evidence of autumn hunting camps where reindeer were processed, with specific areas for butchering, hide preparation, and tool maintenance. The placement of hearths and work areas shows remarkable organization, like a prehistoric assembly line designed for maximum efficiency. The preparations began weeks before the actual move. Women gathered extra plant foods that could be dried and carried. Seeds from summer fruits were carefully saved, not just for food, but because they knew where these plants grew along their migration route. Men crafted new spear points and repaired carrying frames. Children collected materials for fire starting, learning through participation the rhythms that governed their world. Modern hunter-gatherers in similar environments travel between 300 and 500 miles annually in their seasonal rounds. For Paleolithic Europeans following herds and plant cycles, the distances were likely similar. Each season brought its own challenges and opportunities. Spring meant bird eggs and fresh greens. Summer brought berries and small game. Autumn delivered nuts and migrating herds, while winter required reliance on stored foods and different hunting strategies. The genius of these seasonal movements becomes clear when we examine the archaeological record. Sites like Dolní Věstonice in the Czech Republic show evidence of repeated occupation over thousands of years. The same families return to the same spots generation after generation, creating a deep knowledge of place that modern GPS systems can barely match. They knew where the best flint could be found, which valleys were protected from winter winds, where medicinal plants grew, and when specific animals would appear. Climate data extracted from ice cores and pollen samples confirms that Paleolithic peoples successfully navigated dramatic environmental changes. During the last glacial maximum about 20,000 years ago, when ice sheets covered much of northern Europe, human populations adapted their seasonal movements, shifting ranges southward but maintaining their essential patterns. This flexibility, built on deep environmental knowledge, allowed our ancestors to survive changes that drove other species to extinction. The sound comes first, a rhythmic whooping that echoes across the valley. The hunters are returning, and from the sound, it's been a successful day. The entire camp erupts in activity. Children race to the edge of the settlement, women set aside their work, and even the elders rise from their afternoon rest. In the Paleolithic world, a successful hunt meant more than just dinner. It meant survival for another few days, materials for tools and clothing, and a reason for celebration. As the hunting party comes into view, the evidence of their success is clear. 4 men carry a pole between them, a red deer suspended from it. But this is more than just meat. Archaeological studies of kill sites across Europe show that Paleolithic hunters utilized every part of their prey. The antlers would become tools and weapons, the hide would be transformed into clothing and shelter, the sinew would serve as thread, the bones would be cracked for marrow and carved into needles, even the hooves would be boiled for glue. The division of the kill followed protocols as old as humanity itself. Studies of modern hunter-gatherers suggest these rules were complex and crucial for maintaining social harmony. The hunter who made the killing blow might receive choice portions, but every family would get their share. Special portions went to pregnant women, the elderly, and families with many children. This wasn't charity, but investment in the group's future. Evidence from sites like Abri-Pataud in France shows dedicated butchering areas where the same techniques were used for thousands of years. Cut marks on bones reveal a standardized approach to processing that would rival any modern butcher shop. The knowledge of anatomy was precise, with specific tools for different tasks. This expertise didn't develop overnight, but was refined across generations, each hunter adding to the collective knowledge. The celebration that followed went beyond mere feasting. Bone flutes dating to 40,000 years ago have been found across Europe, suggesting music accompanied these gatherings. The famous cave paintings at Lascaux might represent hunting magic, with rituals performed to ensure future success. The social bonds reinforced during these celebrations were as important as the calories consumed. Sharing food, telling the story of the hunt, performing rituals of gratitude. All these activities strengthened the connections that allowed small bands to survive in challenging environments. Modern experiments in prehistoric hunting techniques reveal just how skilled these ancestors were. Using replicas of Paleolithic weapons, researchers have found that accuracy and power required years of practice. The hunters returning to camp weren't just lucky. They were masters of their craft, combining knowledge of animal behavior, weather patterns, terrain, and weapon technology in ways that ensured their community's survival. Young Core sits cross-legged beside the master toolmaker, watching every movement with intense concentration. At 12 years old, he's been chosen for this honor, selected from among his age mates for his steady hands and patient nature. There were no schools in the Paleolithic, but education was constant and vital. The apprentice system that would later formalize in medieval guilds had its roots in these ancient teaching relationships. The archaeological record reveals this learning process through what researchers call practice pieces. At sites across Europe, archaeologists find poorly made tools alongside masterworks, clear evidence of learners working beside experts. At Étiolles in France, researchers discovered a knapping workshop dating to 13,000 years ago where they could actually trace the learning process. Discarded pieces showed progressive improvement, from clumsy first attempts to increasingly sophisticated work. The master demonstrates the technique again, angling the hammerstone just so, predicting where the flake will separate. This isn't just craft, but science. Modern studies show that successful stone tool making requires understanding of fracture mechanics that wouldn't be formally described until the 20th century. Yet Paleolithic toolmakers intuited these principles through generations of accumulated knowledge. Learning extended far beyond tool making. Girls learned plant identification from their mothers and aunts, memorizing not just which plants were edible, but when to harvest them, how to process them, and which ones had medicinal properties. Boys learned to read animal tracks, predict weather changes, and navigate using stars and landmarks. This knowledge transfer happened through observation, practice, and gentle correction, creating an educational system that produced graduates capable of surviving in environments that would challenge modern humans with all our technology. The apprentice system also served social functions. It created bonds between generations, ensured cultural continuity, and provided a pathway for innovation. When apprentices from different bands met during seasonal gatherings, they exchanged techniques, spreading innovations across vast territories. A new way of hafting a spear point developed in one valley might spread across a continent within a generation through these knowledge networks. Physical evidence of this teaching process appears in the form of handprints in caves. At Gargas Cave in France, researchers found hundreds of hand stencils, many clearly made by children. These weren't random graffiti, but possibly part of initiation ceremonies, marking the transition from child to apprentice. The placement of these prints, often in difficult-to-reach locations, suggests they held deep significance in the learning process. As most of the band settles for sleep, Avon takes his position at the edge of camp, spear within reach, eyes scanning the darkness. The night watch was perhaps the most critical job in Paleolithic society, though it left little archaeological evidence. While others dreamed, the watchers stood between their families and the dangers that prowled in darkness. The threats were real and varied. Cave bears, though primarily vegetarian, could be aggressive when surprised. Saber-toothed cats, cave hyenas, and wolf packs all posed genuine dangers. Evidence from Paleolithic sites shows that humans weren't always the apex predators we imagine. Bones bearing both human tool marks and carnivore tooth marks tell stories of competition for resources and occasional tragic encounters. The night watchers developed sophisticated strategies. They maintained fires at strategic points around the camp, knowing that most predators feared flame. They learned to interpret every sound, distinguishing between the harmless rustling of small nocturnal animals and the purposeful approach of a predator. They knew that certain times of night were more dangerous than others, with the hours just before dawn being particularly critical when both humans and guards were at their most vulnerable. Archaeological evidence suggests these guards did more than just watch. At sites like Dolní Věstonice, researchers found evidence of nighttime activities, including tool making and hide processing. The watchers kept their hands busy with tasks that could be done by firelight, maximizing productivity while maintaining vigilance. This multitasking approach meant that even security duties contributed to the group's material culture. The psychological toll of night watching shaped human evolution itself. Our ability to function on reduced sleep, our heightened night vision compared to other apes, and our acute hearing all evolved partly in response to the needs of nocturnal vigilance. The watchers developed techniques we still use today, from caffeine-like stimulants made from certain plants to physical exercises that maintain alertness. The rotation of watch duties reveals sophisticated social organization. Evidence from seasonal camps shows that watching duties were shared according to complex rules considering age, health, and family obligations. Young adults typically took the most challenging middle-of-the-night shifts, while experienced hunters handled the critical pre-dawn hours. This system ensured that the community's security never depended on a single individual's alertness, creating redundancy that modern security experts would recognize as best practice. The accident happens quickly. Mara drops her clay-lined basket too close to the fire, expecting disaster. Instead, she discovers that the clay has hardened into a waterproof container. This fictional moment represents thousands of real discoveries that transformed Paleolithic life. Innovation wasn't planned in research laboratories, but emerged from daily activities, accidents, and careful observation. The archaeological record is full of such revolutionary moments. The oldest known fired ceramics come from Dolní Věstonice, dating to 29,000 years ago. These weren't pots, but figurines, suggesting that the technology was first used for symbolic purposes before someone realized its practical applications. This pattern repeats throughout prehistory, with innovations often beginning in one context before spreading to others. Consider the development of the needle, one of humanity's most underappreciated inventions. The oldest-eyed needles date to about 50,000 years ago, found in Denisova Cave in Siberia. This simple tool revolutionized clothing production, allowing for fitted garments that provided better insulation. The archaeological evidence shows rapid spread of this technology, suggesting information networks that spanned continents. Innovation required not just discovery, but acceptance. New techniques had to prove themselves against established traditions. The archaeological record shows periods of technological conservatism, punctuated by rapid change. During the Middle Paleolithic, tool styles remained relatively stable for thousands of years. Then, around 50,000 years ago, the pace of innovation accelerated dramatically. New tool types appeared and spread rapidly, suggesting changes in how knowledge was shared and preserved. The role of women in Paleolithic innovation is often overlooked, but was likely crucial. Ethnographic studies of modern hunter-gatherers show that women's gathering activities often lead to discoveries about plant processing, medicine, and material properties. The development of weaving, pottery, and food processing technologies likely emerged from the daily activities traditionally associated with women's work. Perhaps most remarkably, Paleolithic peoples developed the concept of improvement itself. They didn't just copy existing tools, but actively experimented with modifications. Microscopic analysis of stone tools reveals constant refinement, with each generation making subtle improvements. This culture of innovation, established in the Paleolithic, set the stage for all future human technological development. As the fire burns low, the elders gather for the evening's final task: planning tomorrow. This might seem mundane, but the ability to think beyond the immediate moment represented a cognitive revolution that separated our ancestors from other species. The archaeological evidence for planning extends back hundreds of thousands of years, written in the placement of tools, the selection of campsites, and the storage of resources. At Caveman Cave in Israel, archaeologists discovered evidence of planning that dates back 400,000 years. Our ancestors were selecting specific stones for tools and storing them for future use. They kept fires burning continuously for months, requiring careful management of fuel resources. They preserved bones for marrow extraction weeks after the initial kill. These weren't spontaneous actions, but deliberate strategies requiring forethought and coordination. The evening planning sessions covered immediate needs and long-term strategies. Where would tomorrow's hunting party search? Which plants were ready for gathering? Who would watch the children while others worked? These decisions required encyclopedic knowledge of the environment, weather patterns, and seasonal changes. Modern project managers would recognize the complexity of coordinating a band's activities to ensure everyone was fed, protected, and productive. Evidence for this planning appears in the archaeological record as caches, stored materials hidden for future use. Throughout Europe and Asia, researchers have found collections of tools, raw materials, and even food stores deliberately hidden. These caches required not just planning, but trust that the materials would remain untouched, suggesting social agreements that extended beyond immediate family groups. The cognitive demands of planning shaped our ancestors' brains. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for executive function and future planning, expanded dramatically during human evolution. This wasn't coincidence, but adaptation. Those who could plan survived harsh winters, anticipated animal migrations, and prepared for seasonal changes. Natural selection favored the planners, the warriors, the ones who asked, "What if?" As the elders conclude their discussion and bank the fire for the night, they've ensured their band's survival for another day. But more than that, they've participated in a ritual as old as humanity itself, using the past to inform the present and prepare for the future. This capacity for temporal thinking, developed around Paleolithic campfires, remains one of humanity's defining characteristics. Dawn approaches again, and the Paleolithic day begins anew. The same rhythms that governed life 30,000 years ago continue, yet each day brings subtle variations. This is the paradox of Paleolithic life: constant routine punctuated by constant adaptation. As we've seen throughout these chapters, our ancestors' days were filled not with primitive struggling, but with sophisticated activities that laid the groundwork for all human achievement. The image of the caveman as a brutish, simple creature dissolves when we examine the archaeological evidence. These were people who created art that still moves us, developed technologies we still use, and established social patterns we still follow. They were musicians and storytellers, careful planners and bold innovators, loving parents and loyal friends. Their days were as full and complex as our own, just structured around different priorities. What strikes modern researchers most is the sustainability of Paleolithic life. For over 2 million years, our ancestors lived in relative balance with their environment. They took what they needed, but rarely more. Their impact on the planet was minimal. Their social groups were egalitarian, and their lifestyle promoted both physical and mental health. Studies of modern hunter-gatherers show lower rates of depression, anxiety, and chronic disease compared to industrialized populations. The skills developed during the Paleolithic continue to influence us. Our love of stories around campfires echoes their evening gatherings. Our children learn through observation and practice, just as Paleolithic apprentices did. We still form small, close-knit social groups despite living in cities of millions. We're still thrilled by the hunt, whether for bargains or business deals. The patterns established over hundreds of thousands of years don't disappear in a few thousand years of civilization. As our Paleolithic ancestors faced each new day, they carried the accumulated wisdom of countless generations. They knew that survival required cooperation, that knowledge needed to be preserved and shared, that innovation must be balanced with tradition. These lessons, learned around ancient fires and passed down through millennia, remain relevant as we face our own challenges. The Paleolithic day ends as it began, with the simple acts of survival transformed into the complex dance of human culture. In understanding how our ancestors spent their days, we understand ourselves better. We are not fallen angels who have lost some primitive paradise, nor are we elevated apes who have transcended our animal nature. We are the inheritors of a magnificent legacy, shaped by millions of days of careful observation, patient teaching, and persistent innovation. The next time you plan tomorrow's activities, teach a skill to a child, or gather with friends around a meal, remember that you're participating in traditions as old as humanity itself.